Perfect.
My cameras today are not playing ball, so we're going to use my iPhone and see if this works. Okay. I have to balance my laptop and the mic on here because I don't have a mic stand yet and we don't have a coffee table. USB mic. Ugh. Let's see if it's any good today. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. I think I'll have to cradle this mic because I don't have a stand yet. Let's go! Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Mind. Today, as you can see, we have a little bit of a change of scenery because every month I needed to stay disciplined and focused to record a solo episode, and I thought, why don't I just make it easier for myself and do it at home? So I've just moved house. I just have a new sofa from the Sofa Club, which I honestly absolutely love. And I thought, why don't I just set up a little studio in my home? So it's not ready yet. It's not perfect. I'm cradling this mic like a little baby, but like I always say, sometimes you just need to start. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be completely polished. You just have to start and then you'll figure it all out. So welcome to my first solo episode in my brand new home where I will be talking about the 5 things I wish I knew in my 20s. Because let me just tell you, there are a lot of lessons that I've learned. There are a lot of lessons that I need to learn. And for a lot of these lessons, I'm still working on them because like everyone else, I'm always trying to grow myself, develop myself, and sometimes I just don't get it right. So before we start, I'm going to do what all the other podcasters do, and that's going to be to ask you to follow, like, and subscribe to this podcast. But one thing I will tell you is that unlike a lot of the podcasts out there, I don't have a huge team. I'm working on it, but I really do need your help and support. I do not look at the subscriber count as just a number. I see all of you as investors in my business, as investors in this podcast. And that's why every single week I'm trying to make this bigger and better. And so if you invest in me, which you already are doing with your time, but if you invest 10 seconds of your time by pressing the subscribe button, which is totally free by the way, you will help me to get bigger and better guests and invest in this podcast to make it the best in the world. Because that's my goal. If you cannot dream it, you cannot see it. So I really want to ask you all, if you can, just do me a really quick favor and press the subscriber button and become an investor in a Millennial Mind. So now that that's out of the way, let's start with lesson 1. I wish I knew that my 20s were going to be the hardest decade of my life. And I wish I knew that I did not have to have it all figured out. I think in our 20s, we put an immense amount of pressure on ourselves. And I think that's because of society and because of the schooling system and the way in which our life kind of flows. So for me, all of my friends went to university, graduated with a degree, and got an amazing job. And I went to university and I really, really, really struggled. I did not enjoy the degree I was doing, which was law and sociology at Warwick, which is one of the best universities, and it was just so challenging. But I also really didn't enjoy, it was so challenging, and I found it really difficult because I felt a lot of my friends were enjoying their degrees, or I was with friends who were like, I don't enjoy my degree, but they got like a first anyway. And I was just never one of those people that could just revise for an hour and then get the job done. You know, I had some friends who partied so hard and then they would still get like flying colors. And I was always like, I wish I could be one of those people. And I think because I struggled so much in school, and then I struggled so much in university, I felt a massive knock in my confidence. Because when I graduated, I was just scrambling for a job, if I'm completely honest. I was actually not very motivated, and I was a totally different person. I was quite lazy. I wasn't that bothered. And I actually think one of the main reasons why I was lazy and not bothered is because I thought if I try and I fail, it's way worse if I don't try. So I just didn't bother trying because then I felt like no one could blame me or I couldn't blame myself. And so a lot of the time I felt like I just didn't do things very well, or like, for example, with jobs, I barely applied to any. And then the first job I got, I kind of just took it. I think I only did like 2 interviews. I got through to 2 interviews. And at one point I was considering being a retail manager in Hollister because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And I think I was definitely in that mindset of I should be grateful for anything I get because I'm not worthy. And I think the amount of pressure we put on ourselves to find our dream job, to find the thing that we love, to find the thing that's going to make us really happy, just was so hard for me, because I went to go work for Eon, which is an amazing company, and I really did enjoy working there. However, throughout my grad scheme, I had to do different placements. My first placement was in Bedford. Now, all my friends were all working in London. So they were all going into the city, dressing up super nicely, going out to fancy places for lunch, going for drinks after work. And I just felt like I was stuck in Bedford. I was working in an industrial estate. I wasn't even in a town. The only thing that I could do, which was fun and remotely exciting, was go to Waitrose, and I had to cross a dual carriageway because it was in the middle of an industrial estate. And I just felt so low at that point, because I thought, everyone else has got an amazing job. I don't really have a great job. I was working in a call center, so it wasn't like everyone was dressed up in suits or like dresses every single day. And I just felt really low at that point in my life. And I remember thinking that I'm never going to amount to anything, because I really thought that I had to have it all figured out by 20. And I think the number one thing that I wish I knew was nobody has it figured out in their 20s. Also, no one even has it figured out in their 30s or 40s. We're all just trying to figure things out as we go along. But I think this idea of a dream job once you graduate, a dream life, it's just never true. I would say now I'm living part of my dream life, but I also do think that I've done a lot of work on myself to get here. And I also think that my dreams will change. I'm just super grateful for where I am now. And I think that's another lesson I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I do think in your 20s, there's just this mounting pressure of things that you think you need to achieve and things that you think you have to do. And I really did not align with that. I also think that your 20s are kind of labeled as the best time of your life. You know, you're meant to be young and free and single, and also be at this point where you're basically a child who's living like an adult life. You know, this is the time where we're growing up. We're learning things about ourselves. We're learning things about society. We're learning things about other people. We're learning things about our friendships. And I just feel like in your 20s, there's so much pressure to know what's right and what's wrong. And I just think that we need to give more grace to people who are in their 20s, because it's so overhyped. It's probably not the best time of your life. You probably have the least amount of money, the least amount of experience, the least amount of emotional intelligence. You are just figuring things out. It's like you're a child in an adult's body and in an adult's world. And I know it's a time for us to grow up and learn about ourselves, but especially my early 20s, I really did feel that pressure. So lesson number one is, do not put pressure on yourself to figure things out in your 20s. You will figure things out as you go along. And just know that you don't have to have the dream career when you begin. You do not have to have the dream life when you begin. You will figure out what you love. Now, this leads on very nicely to lesson number two, which is, I wish I knew that I had to do things for myself and not for society. Growing up, I truly and honestly believed that the path that we should all choose in life is to go to school, get good grades, go to a good university, get good grades, get an amazing job, you find the dream man, you get married at 25, and you have 3 kids by the time you're 30. Now I just turned 31 on Tuesday, and so as I sit here on my very lovely cream couch, you can see that I obviously do not have kids, because anyone who has kids does not have a couch like this, because it would just get stained and ruined. And when my nieces and nephews come over, I will tell you how they stood the test of time. But I felt that I was a failure if I did not have those things. And if I'm completely honest, it took me a very long time to rewind my thoughts, to allow myself to know that I'm not a failure if I haven't achieved those milestones in those set timings that I created when I was 18. So when I turned 30, it was one of the most difficult times for me, because I was like, oh my God, I haven't done this, this, and this. And I still distinctly remember when I was 25, I had somebody come round and they said to me, have you found someone yet? And I said, not yet. I'd just broken up from a long-term relationship, and it was still very raw and really horrible. And they said, but you do know you only have 2 years left. And I said, 2 years for what? And they said, until you finish your prime. And that amount of pressure that was put in my 20s for me to be in my prime, get married as a young bride, for me to have all of these things figured out. You know, finding a life partner takes a long time. You need to know yourself first before you know what you want. And I know a lot of people judge a lot of people for that experience, but I really think it's the most important and beautiful thing if you're comfortable, secure, and happy within yourself. And then you go and look for happiness elsewhere. And a partner should complement you. They shouldn't define who you are. And I feel like in your 20s, you're just figuring out who you are. You're just figuring out, who am I? What do I want? What do I care about? And in my 20s, I was just so focused on what society wanted. What did other people expect of me? What did other people want from me? Who should I be? How should I present myself? And I think the most amazing part for me was starting this podcast really allowed me to explore that. It really allowed me to authentically be myself, because at first when I started, I was never speaking this expressively because I didn't think that I was able to. I didn't feel confident enough to express myself in the way that I normally do because I thought other people wouldn't like it. And that's why I think that my 20s were a massive point in my life where, especially my late 20s, where I was character building like no time before because I was really figuring out who I am. And that's the one thing I wish I did earlier. I think that's the one thing I wish people taught you in schools. Like, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you want? And the other point I want to say here is in my 20s, one of the best things that I did was go traveling. So when I left my job at Aeon, they were offering voluntary redundancy. I was working in Nottingham. I always wanted to be in London. I took the voluntary redundancy and I went traveling by myself for 2 months. Now, my parents will say this is the most traumatic experience of their life. And we were at dinner on the weekend and they were like, it was so traumatic. We couldn't sleep at night. It's the worst thing in the whole world. I would never recommend anyone to tell their children to go traveling. I would always recommend it. You have to be street smart. You have to be super vigilant, and you have to be like really aware. And obviously if you can go with someone, great. I went by myself and I actually think it was the most amazing thing that I ever did. I never took a gap year. I never had traveled by myself before, and it was something that I just really, really wanted to do. And I felt like it was the best thing for me because I felt so confident, so independent. I felt so free. And I'll never forget when I was in Bali, I was just walking around barefoot. I hadn't washed my hair in like a week. I was wearing no makeup. I was in harem pants. And I was just having the best time of my life. And I felt like I made really authentic connections with people as well. And that's when I think I started to have really deep conversations. Because when you're traveling, you'll meet people from so many different parts of the world. There's so much curiosity there. There's so much understanding there. There's so much more to surface level small talk. And I feel that experience just made me so much happier and more confident in life. And I actually think that doing that in my 20s was the best thing I ever did, because now if you ask me to go traveling by myself, I don't think I would go. I feel like it was one of those things that I wanted to do in my 20s. I'm so happy I did it. But I wouldn't go again now, especially now that I have Nikhil and I want to travel with him. I feel like it's not like I would never go alone, but it's just I wouldn't go for 2 months by myself and feel happy and confident doing so. So I do think that your 20s are also a time where you should spend time alone. I actually think you should spend time alone at all points in your life. I still spend time alone every single day. I make sure I have my time where it's just protected and it's just me. I also sometimes just love to have weekends where I'm spending it by myself. And I think that it's such a nice thing to enjoy your own company, because if you can't enjoy your own company, how can you expect someone else to enjoy your own company? And that was something that I learned, I think, on a podcast. And it just really reframed my thinking, because in my 20s, I think I was so shamed if I wanted to spend time alone. I remember when I used to work at Aeon, I used to have to work like in hotels and stuff. So for my second placement, I was in King's Winford, which is outside of Birmingham. And again, it was in an industrial estate. So in the evening, they had like this park where they had like a Papa John's and a Bella Italia and like a View Cinema and like all these other little restaurants. And I often would go to dinner by myself. We were often in a group, but a lot of people were much older than me, or, they were parents, or they would travel back to their homes. And so there wasn't many of us, like a team on site that would go for dinner every night. Sometimes we would, but I would say out of the 4 days I was there, 3 days every week I would definitely eat by myself. And I learned there that it was okay to eat alone. I learned there that I wasn't a loser, that it wasn't weird, that you can enjoy your own company. And you know what? The other day when I went for my birthday dinner at Franco Manca, I was sitting with Nikhil, and next to us was a man who had his headphones in. He was watching a movie on his phone, and he just looked so happy. And it reminded me of me when I was working in King's Winford, when I was staying in these hotels, and I'd be watching a movie on my phone or my laptop. And I just remember being so comfortable and happy with myself, and I didn't need to do it with other people. And I think traveling gave me that experience, and also working at Aeon gave me that experience, because I just had to learn to be comfortable eating by myself. And I had to learn to enjoy it, because otherwise I would just be miserable all the time. So I do think in my 20s, I really wish that I'd spent more time on myself. I did definitely in the latter part, but definitely at the start, I wish at uni or, just when I started my job, I didn't feel like I had to go out every weekend or had to see friends, or I was a loser if I stayed at home on a Friday night. I've learned now that it's actually much nicer to stay home on a Friday night because you need a bit of a break. But when I was in my 20s, I just felt like I would be weird if I said on a Friday night I didn't want to go out and I wanted to stay at home. So lesson number 2 is make sure you do things for you and not for society, and make sure you spend time on yourself and getting to know who you really are. Okay, lesson number 3, and this is something that I feel that I still need to remind myself of. And that is, I wish that I knew not to compare myself and to have compassion for myself and other people. In my 20s, I felt like I was constantly comparing myself to everyone. Like I mentioned, I felt like I wasn't in my dream job. I felt like I wasn't doing my dream things. I felt like I wasn't wearing the right things to work. I felt like everyone else was doing way better things than me all the time. And I also really think that back in the day, I'm going to say back in the day because I'm old now, but back in the day when I was in my 20s, especially during my early 20s, we didn't talk about mental health. We were not talking about journaling, about a gratitude practice, about affirmations. No one was speaking about this. And even though now I still find myself comparing myself to other people, I'm human. I'm obviously not sometimes going to feel like, oh my God, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. I feel like now I have the right tools and practices to help me. And one of those tools and practices that really honestly has changed the way I think about things has been journaling. Every single day in my performance planner, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for and then 3 affirmations. And Tony Robbins does this on his Power Hour walk. And he basically says that this is the way in which you manifest your dream life, because you're appreciating what you have, you're honing in on the things that you have, and then you're affirming what you want. And I just feel by doing that every single day, I'm focusing on the things that make me happy. I'm focusing on things that I want, and I'm actually writing those things down that I believe that I can have. So visualization is another really powerful technique. I just did a workshop on that on Sunday. So if you want to join my Sunday workshops, you can tap the link in the bio. And you can watch back that workshop as well, because it was so powerful, the exercise that we did, because when your brain and your mind visualizes something that you think that you can do, your brain actually believes that it's happened. So what you're doing is actually showing yourself, hey, I can do that. It's possible. Rather than thinking, I can't do it, I'm not even going to think about it, you're putting yourself in a situation, and we were super specific, super descriptive in the workshop, and then we visualized it afterwards. What we're allowing our brain to do is see ourselves in the situation that we desire. And therefore, if we can see ourselves in that situation we can desire, we can come up with an idea or some processes or a way in which we get it, because it is possible. It's no longer something that we don't even think that we can do. So I think visualization, gratitude journaling, and writing affirmations and saying them every single day has helped me so much now in my 30s whenever I find myself comparing myself to other people. The other thing that has really, really helped me is understanding Stephen Covey's circle of control and circle of influence. When I was in my 20s, I was worrying about things that I couldn't control. All the time, I'd be like, I'm so worried about this, I'm so worried about that, I'm so worried about this. Now that I'm in my 30s, of course, my natural instinct is to worry. My natural instinct about anything I'm struggling with, even if it's something I can't control, is to be like, oh my God, what a disaster. But very quickly, I can say, can I do anything about it? If I cannot do anything about it, why am I going to waste a precious day on this planet worrying about it? Now, I will say, it's not like I'm this guru and like self-realized person that I can just snap myself out of it in a minute. It does take time. Some days I'm quicker at doing that. Some days I'm slower at doing that. And I just give myself grace. I'm only learning about these things in the last 5 years. I cannot condition my mind for the last 27 years to think differently. 26 years, I'm 31. Why did I put myself older there? But for 26 years, I thought in a certain way, and now I'm trying to change it. And it may take me another 26 years to be this enlightened guru when I'm 52, and I'll be able to tell you nothing bothers me. I'm not stressed out about anything. But now that I'm in my 30s, because I have these processes, because I have these tools, they can help me. And I can get to that place much quicker than when I was in my 20s, and I had no idea on how to get there and what to do. So lesson number 3, do not compare yourself to other people. Have compassion for yourself and have compassion for others. None of us know what we're doing. All of us are just trying to figure it out. And I think that is one of the most powerful lessons that I constantly have to remind myself of, and I'll probably say it 500 more times in this podcast. Lesson number 4, which is a very empowering one, and I'm having a good day today, so I feel like I'm going to say it with joy, is I wish I knew how much power I had within me. I think for me, growing up, and I've mentioned it several times already, I really didn't think I was good at anything. I really didn't think I was worthy of success. I didn't really think I was worthy of a lot. And I just thought, whatever you're given, you should just take, because, you should just deal with it. You're not that clever. You're not that beautiful. You're not that smart. You're just whatever. And I really did not know what my strengths were. I grew up really honestly hating who I was as a person. And if I'm honest, I still sometimes have those days where I'm like, why did I say that? Or what did I do? Or how can I change this? And things like that. And my inner critic was so, so, so big because of school and because of university. I just felt like I had a really low self-esteem. I was always a very confident speaker. So I think if you met me, I wasn't shy. I've never been a shy person. But did I believe that I was worthy of success? No. Did I believe that I was ever going to make it in life? Inherently, I thought miraculously I would have a great life, but I didn't think that I was going to be successful. I always thought that I was going to be okay. But when I was in school, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was only kind of when I started at 25 that I was like, something is going to happen for me and I'm going to make it. I don't know what it was, but definitely at school and at university when my grades were just really not at the top of the class. And I believed that in order to be successful, you had to have straight A's. I just really hated not being that smart. I really thought that I wasn't clever. And recently I've realized that it's not that I wasn't smart or I wasn't clever. One, I got diagnosed with dyslexia from a teacher, not from a doctor. I do need to go and get that done because of the way that I read. And she was like, hold on. How are you reading this page? And I was like, I thought this is normal to like read line number 1 and then paragraph number 3 and then the end. I'm so confused. What do you mean you read like this? And then secondly, I think like a lot of people at the moment, we're more aware of ADHD and what level we are on the spectrum. But I really did struggle to concentrate. I was always super tired. I found it very difficult to read. And I think for me, I was never like in the science and maths field. I really enjoyed like English and history and RE and philosophy. And despite me enjoying those things, I did struggle, to write down and actually communicate how I feel on paper. But speaking, I could tell you. And that's why whenever I would go to tuition and I would talk to my tutors, they'd be like, Shivani's going to get straight A's. And then my grades would come and I would get like a B and a C. And my parents would be like, you convinced your tutor, you're the idiot. And I would be like, no, I do know the stuff. I just can't write it down. Anyway, I'm digressing. But the point is that because I struggled so much and I wasn't the best in school, I just didn't think I was going to be the best at anything. I think a lot of us feel that way. When we're not the best in one area of our life, we think that translates into all areas of our life and we're just complete failures. But you're not a failure if you're figuring things out. You're not a failure if you haven't sorted it all out from the beginning. And I spoke about this recently in my recent podcast with, look at me now. I'm sitting here, we're holding this mic. Am I failing at this podcast? No. Could it be better? Yes. But have I started? Also, yes. So if we wait for everything to be perfect, if I waited to have a painting behind me and some decorations behind me and a stand to come and to have a lovely coffee table, I wouldn't start the solo episode for probably another month because all these other things take time. And even then I would find something to stop me from doing it. So my motto in life now is like, just stop trying to be perfect. Just start. Know that you have power within you. You don't need fancy equipment or a fancy this or a fancy that to get started. You don't need everything else. You just need you. And in order for you to need you, you need to believe in yourself. You need to find your strengths and you need to know what you're good at. And a book that was really helped me is Ikigai because it comes up with these 4 quadrants. What do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can you be paid for? And in the middle is your purpose. It's your Ikigai. So if you haven't read that book, I'd really highly recommend reading it. And hopefully you can find your Ikigai. So lesson number 4, always know that you have so much power within you. You have strengths that nobody else does. You have the most beautiful qualities that someone else may not have. And even though you can't see it, I'm sure someone can. So take a moment today to write down what are you good at, what are your strengths, and how amazing you are. You deserve it. Okay, the last point, which is the one that I really feel like we really need to be taught about in school, finances. Why was I never taught about finances in school? I didn't even know what taxes were until I started my job. I didn't even know what an ISA was until I started my job. There were so many things, and both my parents are accountants, so I'm going to blame them. But I didn't know about so much stuff, and actually I'm going to credit my parents because they did teach me so much, because they're both accountants, about the world of finances. One thing that I really struggled with when I was in my 20s was really understanding how to navigate, saving, what to invest in. I had no idea about investments. I think investments were always taught to me and seen to me as very risky things that nobody does, and you have to be super well educated to do it. But after my podcast with Simran, I realized that actually we should all be investing from a very young age. And I'm not going to go into it. You can watch that episode. But I do feel like I wish I knew about investing then. I also think in our 20s, we are told to spend money on the wrong things. Like point 2 and point 3, I think I was like, oh, I should be investing my money into nice things. I should be investing my money into property. One thing I'm so glad is I didn't buy this flat that I was gonna buy, because I thought that you must invest your money into property and you're an idiot if you don't. But I'm really glad I actually didn't. And I invested that money into my podcast and into my performance planner and my other ventures, because that has actually made me so much happier than having a property on rent. Sure, I'm not on the property ladder, but I have got something that in 10 years, I think will be more beneficial to me than that property. And I just wish that I knew all of these things in my 20s. Like, you do not have to buy a property, Shivani. There are other things you can invest in, like yourself. The other thing I'll say on that as well is that I was taught to save everything I could possible so that I could buy a house. And I didn't quit my job for so long because in my head I was like, this is my job and it's giving me X income. From that X income, this is how much I spend personally, and then this is how much I save. If I start a business, I don't know when I'm going to be making X income to take out stuff to save, because everything that I'm making, I'm trying to reinvest to make the podcast better. When I started, I would release, record, edit the whole thing myself, do the thumbnails, do the captions, all of that. Now I have someone who works with me on YouTube. Now I have someone who works with me on TikTok. Now I have a short form editor. Now I have a long form editor. And so all of these people require a salary. They require money. And in order to do that, I need to take the money I'm getting from the business and give it to them. Now, in the beginning, I couldn't do that. So in my head, I was like, hold on. If I want to make this podcast better, I have to accept that I'm not going to have any savings. And for me, as someone who'd been taught that you have to have savings as security, I took so long to make the decision to quit my job because I was like, I'm going to have no money. I'm going to have no savings. What if something happens? What will I do? And so that was one of the hardest things I think I had to learn. And even in my 30s, I had to accept that, okay, you haven't got X amount in your savings, but you've got X amount in investment in your business. And I think that over time, I've changed my relationship with money. And one thing I will say that has changed my relationship with money is affirmations. I know a lot of people do not give affirmations the credit that they so deserve, and they are a bit woo-woo. And I'm not saying I would wake up and say, like, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. I would wake up and say, I love seeing my bank account grow every day. I love that I have multiple streams of income. Affirmations like that were true, I would just reaffirm them. And I always believe now that I will always be okay financially. I don't know why, I just always have told myself that even if you're in a panic stage, even if you don't see streams of income coming in, you will be okay. And I think because of that, I no longer am so uptight and scared and worried about money. And I don't know how it works, the law of attraction does, but I am okay. And I really do think that I really do think that a lot of the time when we're taking risks, we hold ourselves back financially. And I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not going to say you should all quit your jobs and just not think about the risk. What I will say is that in order to grow, you do have to take risks. And the financial risk that I took of starting my business, losing my salary, moving out within 6 months of doing that, did eventually pay off. And, you know, I think for so long, I never ever imagined that it would. And I was always so petrified. And I was constantly saying to myself, but what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? But what if it does? So lesson number 5 is I wish I knew more about finances, and I wish I knew that I could change the way I thought about money. So these are my 5 lessons. I really hope that you saw value in this, whether in your 20s or your 30s. One thing that I will emphasize again is that we are figuring this out. I am not sitting here saying that I've mastered these 5 lessons. I never worry about anything anymore. I am so enlightened, and I never compare myself, and I know to trust myself, and I don't listen to society, and I know everything about finances. No, I don't. But these are the lessons that I've learned that have really transformed the way I think, who I am, and how I've grown as a person. And as you all know, I'm someone who always wants to learn and understand a different perspective. And that's why I always talk about these 5 areas of your life, because it's your career, your health, your relationship, your personal development, and your passions that keep you alive. All of those things combined make you happy. So if this video resonated with you and you're always looking for other tools and tips to boost your self-development and your growth, you can join my weekly workshops every single Sunday, where I talk about a range of different topics. I want you to remember, figuring things out doesn't mean you're failing. Even if you're learning how to ride a bike and you fall off 20 times, you're still one step closer to learn how to actually ride that bike. And that's why every Sunday I do a workshop around those 5 different areas, and we talk about self-growth in all of those areas. because we are all together figuring things out. And I just love that I've created a community that's so supportive and loving to help me and to help you. So if you want to join, the link is in my bio. I really, really hope you all enjoyed this podcast. I'm going to be doing a solo episode every single month. So please feel free to tell me any of the things that you want me to talk about. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you very, very soon.